Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you to the 13th Annual Women in Science Alumni Career Panel event. This event is co-sponsored by the AU Career Center and the CAS Undergrad Council. My name is Teresa Larkin, and I'm an Associate Professor of Physics Education and Director of the Dual Degree Combined Plan Program with Columbia University's School of Engineering. I also serve as the advisor to our amazing Women in Science student organization. Women in Science has had a banner year this year, in large part due to our outstanding leadership. I am so proud of this group of students. It's really an honor for me to serve as their advisor and to serve as one of the moderators for this event. I want to remind you that this session is being recorded and will be made available to those who are not able to be here this evening on the Career Center's YouTube channel. You'll also be able to submit questions via the Q&A feature on Zoom. If you are attending the watch party, Kendall Jung, our WIS co-president, will handle securing your questions and posing them to the panelists. We have assembled an outstanding panel of alumni who have all earned a STEM degree at AU. We've invited them to this platform today to provide helpful suggestions and offer advice to you, our current students in the sciences at AU. We hope that the dialogue we begin today will serve to provide you with some advice and useful information as you go forward on your own career paths. The alumni that have taken time out of their own schedules to join us this evening include Laura Purkey, Cassie Rowe, Rae Stewart, and Gianna Williams. After my brief opening remarks, I will turn things over to our WIS leadership, who will start us off by asking each of our alumni panelists to formally introduce themselves. I'd like to start with a few thank yous. First, I'd like to thank everyone at the Career Center, and especially Emily Lalande and Elizabeth Romick for helping with this event. We couldn't have pulled this off without you. We also want to thank all of the awesome folks at the Career Center for your continued and tireless effort to assist our students, including our undergraduate and graduate students, as well as recent graduates as they navigate from the academic world to the next phase of their professional journeys. One goal of this panel event is to learn about the experiences of our alums as they traversed both their academic as well as their professional STEM careers. It's our hope that these shared experiences will provide encouragement to our current undergrad and grad students in STEM. An additional goal of tonight's event is about making important connections. One thing I've learned, having spent over 25 years of my teaching career at AU, is that our alumni understand the importance of making and keeping professional connections. They stay in touch with faculty members and are always willing to give of their time to help out current students. And making these connections is perhaps more important now than it's ever been before. And so we really appreciate all of you panelists being here this evening. I want to share with you the message that I continue to reiterate to my own students. It's simple and it's powerful, and that is, we are stronger together. It's through events such as this one that I am reminded of the true sense of community that forms the backbone of everything we do at AU to embrace one another and live the message of equity and inclusion as members of the AU community. Before we begin, I want to outline the format for the event. Following these welcome remarks, I will turn things over to one of my co-moderators, Carly Rochford, our WIS recruitment chair, who will ask the alumni to speak for approximately 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Following the introductions, Carly, along with Talia Mitri, our WIS co-president, will ask the panelists questions from a list prepared by the Career Center and sent to the panelists in advance. We will set aside about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how long our intros take for these questions. We will then move on to questions from the audience. At this point, Co-President Kendall will serve to ask the questions received from the audience. And again, you may also type your questions into the Q&A area, and we will do our best to address as many of them as we can in the time that remains. And lastly, I want to thank our panelists for being here this evening and helping us to make a put together a wonderful event. So I'm going to keep my remarks short, and I'm going to turn things over to Carly and our outstanding leaders to handle the rest of the panel event. So looking really forward to it, and thanks everyone for being here.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for being here. Tonight, as Dr. Lickern was saying, we have 4 amazing panelists. And so to start, we're going to introduce Laura Purkey, who graduated in 2022 with a degree in biology. And she's currently working in multiple teaching positions, including being an adjunct faculty at AU. And in fall 2023, she will be beginning her PhD in genetics. So without further ado, Laura, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. And yeah, I don't necessarily have too much else to add, but thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, so next up we have Cassie Rowe. She completed her PhD in behavior, cognition, and neuroscience. And she is currently working as the assistant professor for neurobiology in the Department of Surgery at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences. So.
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me today. So as the lady said, I work in the Department of Surgery, and basically medical doctors that work at Walter Reed come to my team and basically ask us to carry out their research projects for them because they're too busy. So my team kind of puts into play experimental design and carries out the research. We also have a statistical staff on board, and then we basically gift that data to the medical doctors, and our research in animal models as well as in clinical samples basically drives medical decisions and clinical support tools for the military. And specifically, we're looking at traumatic injury and the systemic effect on the body. And then I'm a neurobiologist, so of course I'm looking at the brain in these animals. So.
Great, thank you, Cassie. Next up, we have Rae Stewart. She graduated in 2018 with a degree in physics, and she currently is a 4th-year PhD student at George Washington University, and she hopes one day to work as a scientist at NASA Goddard.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel. You can call me Rae. I am currently in the last stages of my PhD, hoping to graduate in the next couple of years and then look for a postdoc position. I also, during that time, earned a master's along the way in physics. And between the time that I graduated from AU and started my PhD, I took a gap year as an optical engineer, also at NASA Goddard, and also worked with the Air and Space Museum. So if you have any questions about gap years, applying to grad school, what grad school life is like, I'm happy to answer those.
Awesome, thank you. And lastly, we have Gianna Williams, who graduated in 2022 with a degree in computer science. She is currently a PhD student as well at Northeastern University, studying computer science with a focus on human-centered computing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gianna. I am currently, a PhD student at Northeastern. My research is within the ideas of computational social science, which is basically the fusing of social justice work and computing. So a lot of my work deals with algorithmic biases, as well as algorithmic auditing and digital resistance.
All right, thank you all. So now we're going to move on to just some questions about your job experiences and your job search and kind of what that was like. So to start off with Laura, what was your job search experience like? And how did you organize your postgraduate job search and where did you begin?
So I'm going to speak a little bit more about grad school applications. So as mentioned, I'll be starting a PhD in molecular genetics in the fall. The adjunct position that I'm currently in at AU was not as much of a search, so I feel like it would be more interesting to kind of talk about this search. But generally applying for grad schools, I think it's kind of daunting just because there's so many options and trying to narrow down, where you might want to go. There's a lot of good programs. So my initial approach for that was kind of just narrowing down by some geographical locations. So most of my applications were all like East Coast schools, and then one in Texas as well. And from there, and I guess just doing that, I really just focused on places where, I could see myself being, or places that, I wanted to kind of live in or had connections to. And from there, I really just started looking at, what sort of schools were in those areas, whether they had programs that, were a good fit for me, programs that I was interested in. And part of that, I think, is looking into, especially for biologists and biology fields, really looking at the research labs, whether there were research labs at each school that I would be interested in working in, and kind of doing some contacting with the heads of those labs, the PIs of the lab, to see whether they would be accepting students and if that was, otherwise a good fit for me.
Awesome, thank you. So next question will go to Cassie. How and with whom did you network when you were looking for job opportunities?
Sure. So I think networking, I started pretty early on into my career. So oftentimes in science, you go to conferences and you're told to network, but you're not really sure what to do. So I kind of make a rule for myself that I'm going to meet like at least 3 new people, and like share my contact information with an additional like 3 people. So if you have a poster presentation or something and you strike up a good conversation with somebody, that's a really good place to start. And then as far as just like networking in your everyday life, I think somebody that you build a relationship with, maybe just like try to ask them like how they got to where they are now, because everybody's path, especially in science, I've like found that it's, it's not an A to B route. It's like, oh, I did this and I took a gap year and I did that and I was really interested in this, but it led me to, the next subject. And I mean, I'm a neurobiologist that works for a military trauma research group, specifically an orthopedic science group, and I just have the expertise in neurobiology and I'm bringing that component into my team. But if you told me 5 years ago when I was finishing up my PhD and starting to look for jobs that's where I would be, I would tell you that you're totally crazy. So I would just say, like, just be open to like new ideas, new possibilities. Like, even if it's not like your niche, just like test the waters a little bit. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so next question will go to Rae. How long did you search for a full-time position, and did you start out in short-term projects?
Yeah, so I started out right when I graduated. I started out by asking the physics department for just if they had heard of any opportunities, connections that were made, following up with people I interned with in previous summers. Like Cassie was saying, like really engaging with those networking opportunities, because in my experience, I've found that it's really vital to be connected, and that really gets you far and opens a lot of doors for you. So as I was looking for more full-time positions, I was working part-time at the Air and Space Museum, which was a position I had started over the course of my undergrad. And I will say that I really appreciated the freedom that came with that. Like right out of school, just did a whole intensive program. Just having just like a couple of months of flexibility. Internally, I was like, I should be freaking out. I don't have like a full-time job, but really just appreciating the unique season that was of being able to travel more or being able to go and just go at a slower pace. Was in a lot of ways a big pro. So I just want to clarify, like, don't necessarily freak out if at the beginning things are slower, you don't have a full-time job that you're able to start immediately after graduating, because those seasons can actually help you understand what you want, what you are prioritizing, and can just give you a little bit more space that other seasons down the line in your career can't afford you. But eventually I was able to follow up with some people that I interned with at NASA Goddard and was able to get a 1-year full-time contract position as an optical engineer. And after that, they would follow up and we would both assess whether I wanted to keep doing that or if I wanted to explore other options. And so that year was really valuable as a short-term full-time position, because it helped me understand that, one, optical engineering wasn't actually for me. And then two, it helped me realize that in order to achieve what I truly wanted, I needed to go back to school, and it provided the proper motivation for that. So I would say connections, and then, yeah, being really open to unexpected opportunities, because even if they aren't where you end up long-term, they can really help showcase what you do want to do long-term and maybe give you the avenues for that.
Thank you so much. All right, so the next question will be going to Gianna. How have you coped with the stress of searching for a job, and how do you maintain a positive mindset?
I can like answer it in terms of like how it was for me for undergrad looking for jobs. I decided during my senior year to just strictly apply to graduate schools, which a lot of people here have said was a very stressful time. And it came down to prioritizing what was important to me at the time. And at the time, it was specifically like my post-grad plans. So like focusing majority of my work during my first semester of my senior year was more geared towards like getting my personal statement together, and like also researching schools in different departments that I was interested in, as well as like looking at different labs that I was interested in. The one thing that I think a lot of people here can say is like when searching for graduate school, specifically for PhD, researching the labs that you're interested in is a really like pivotal part in terms of like crafting your personal statement properly and saying like X is lab on this, that, and the third is the one reason why I would really love to attend that university. And I think the stress of everything and trying to ease that down, it was more towards just like taking everything day by day and not trying to take things as seriously, but also prioritizing, I think, my post-grad goals and allowing like, all right, I'm already a senior. I kind of know how AU works. I know how the curriculum works, and like trying to, one thing I would say is like creating a easier schedule for my first semester senior year rather than second semester, just based off of like time and everything. But yeah, that's just how I would answer.
Thank you. All right, so our next questions will be directed more toward, sorry. will be directed more towards advice you have for graduating students. And so I'm going to hand it over to Talia to ask some questions about that.
Hi. First of all, this has been really nice so far. Thank you so much for sharing about your career paths. I wanted to ask, when you were first looking for your career or for your graduate program, if you have any advice to share on how you went about finding those. Were there like specific job boards or like specific ways that you were able to network and find those that was like outside of just like public Googling? If that makes sense. If we could start with Laura.
So there are some things that exist for stuff like that, for finding you know, I guess like just finding a little bit more information. I know there can be things like Slacks, like Reddit threads, even like Grad Cafe. Like a lot of those like resources are more like based on like student experiences, people that might be going through the process, people that have been through the process. I think that there's some, I don't know, I guess I would like caution against those sometimes because I feel like it can at times be helpful. You can get a lot of advice from other students from all over that are going through this process, but I also think that it can be a bit of a trap to, you know, speaking of like lowering your stress levels, to constantly be seeing what other people are thinking and feeling and going through this process, and what they might be worrying about might make you worry about something that you've never thought of. So I guess I would just take those with a grain of salt, but I think that they can also be a helpful resource. But for me, as far as doing research, I really just started looking at schools and going through like faculty profiles. Most faculty always have a lab website. And so you can start to read more about their research projects. And, you know, usually websites even have information about like current lab members. You can see, you know, if they have some lab culture. There's usually publication links on there. And so when I would find labs that I was very interested in, I would just directly reach out to faculty and see if they would be willing to set up a meeting, speak a little bit more about their research, the programs at their schools, things like that. So I would say preferably, I definitely would just go some of the more old-fashioned route and just really reach out to PIs of labs that you are interested in. I think that that is the best method, in my opinion.
Thank you. Now I wanted to ask Cassie a similar question. If you had a similar experience as Laura in terms of how you found your grad program, and also maybe if you could, I know it's like quite down the line for a few of us, but speak about the differences between how to like network and apply and find grad schools versus careers afterwards.
Sure. And I think what I have to say about like as far as like finding your career and things like that, I think even with a bachelor, some of the things that I'll speak about apply too. So in terms of like other research or like just search strategies or avenues as opposed to, you know, like Glassdoor, LinkedIn, those things. I know like the big journals, Science and Nature, they have really big like job bulletins that you can search, and they post jobs all over the country and even outside the country if you're interested in maybe like traveling for work or something like that. DC is a big hub for government related research, so I guess I could put in a plug for government related work. So technically I'm a contract scientist through something called the Henry M. Jackson Foundation. This company receives like government appropriated funding. The government every year has to redo their budget, and so they can only keep the money for 1 year. The Henry M. Jackson Foundation was set up by President Jackson in order to hold money for multiple years, because as we know in science, grant funding usually runs, between 3 and 5 years, just depending on the grant mechanism. And so HJF has sites all over the country, mostly directed towards military related research or DoD affiliated research. And so you can search, HJF specifically has their own website, and you can search for jobs right on there. I will tell you, there are tons and tons and tons of research assistant positions available all the time, and I highly encourage you guys to apply or reach out to me, like ask for my contact information, and I can put you in touch with at least somebody that has similar research interests to you guys. And then the other thing would be USA Jobs has a huge portal. Essentially, you sign up and you can get notifications when something matches your portal. So that would be more so government affiliated positions. The federal government itself has its own basically like a networking portal and fellowships for undergraduates, master students, and postdoctoral fellows. I believe it's called ORISE, so you can look into that a little bit more. As far as industry goes, I would say probably Glassdoor is the place to start your search, and maybe look for something called contract research organizations, or CROs, if industry is what you're looking into. The Rockville Pike right here in Maryland, if you just drive up and down there, that's where you'll see all of biotech companies. So you can just take a drive and just write down all the different companies' names that you find, and then kind of do your own Google searching on the company. I've done that before. As far as networking for my position and how it's different than finding a graduate student or graduate school position, I would say graduate school, it's very much like the mentee mentorship relationship has to be a really good tight fit and match, and like Laura mentioned, lab culture is super important. I would say when I did my job search for my postdoc, I had zero expectations of what my first interview would even seem like, and it was definitely more basic structured, what you would think of as job related questions, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, versus what are your scientific interests and things like that. And so you had to retrain yourself how to do a proper interview and things like that. And then plan A, I wanted to go into embryology. I'm really big on women's health, and I wanted to do fertility related work, but I needed additional schooling and a certificate for that, and I was just done with school after my PhD. And so when I did my job search, I landed 3 different interviews, one with the FDA, looking at reviewing OBGYN devices. I was offered a position starting at $69,000, which for me at that time sounded like a lot of money. I landed a postdoc at the University of Idaho, Pocatello. They offered me $45,000, but it's Pocatello, Idaho, and that's traditional postdoc salary. And then I found out about HJF through my external reader for my PhD dissertation committee. And I went on their career site and started looking for jobs. I think I applied to 6 different positions, and the person that interviewed me was like the one that I was like least excited about. But I took the interview anyways, and when I met who's my now like boss, I just had like a really, really good conversation with the person. And it just like felt like a really good match for me. And you know, I was promoted, I'm now assistant professor. And I couldn't like, I don't know, I couldn't have imagined my career to go any other way. I was offered $60,000, so I took a middle range salary. And I guess what I would say about like salary is like I wouldn't think about like the dollar amount as like the end all be all. Like think about the experiences, like the skills, like all the possibilities of things that you can gain outside of salary. Like I just wanted like something I could live off of, but wasn't like trying to stress as far as like the highest dollar amount. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. That was very helpful information. Next question is for Rae about networking. I know you spoke about how you started working at the Air and Space Museum even as like an undergraduate, and also your job at NASA like the year after college. So I was wondering what advice you had for undergraduates or like new graduates in your field for the networking and starting out, and also if you just have anything else you'd like to add about networking in your field, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that, okay. I would say that one of the biggest advantages to going to a school like AU is, of course, you have the professors, you have the classes, you have the access to the facilities, but AU's strength is really how centralized of a hub it is, and how many opportunities to network you have. And so I would say one of the best things you could do to take advantage of your time in undergrad is really like collect emails, go to all of the events. If your department is holding a colloquium of some kind, go to it, get to know the speaker, chat afterwards, get their email so that you can follow up with them later. Because one day you can be like, oh yeah, there was that one talk that I found somewhat interesting. You can follow up with that person like years down the line. And even if they don't remember you, most of the time they'll be pretty willing to just sit down and talk with you. Informational interviews, those are a big thing where you can just, there's no expectation of getting a job of some kind, but you just sit down and ask someone for a cup of coffee and just ask like what a day in their life of work is like. And I would definitely say go to events like colloquiums, panels, that sort of a thing. Go to conferences. The way I was able to actually find that my current school was a really good fit for me is because I went to the conference for undergraduate women in physics 2 years before I graduated. And for me, one of the biggest things that I look for when I'm entering a space is what the culture and the community of that environment is like. I don't want to spend years of my life in a place that's going to just be toxic, or I'm going to really struggle through. Like I really want a sense of community and have that be a priority in the culture. And by going to that QWIP, I found it was the year that George Washington actually hosted. I found that they had a similar set of like cultural emphasis on supporting women and not necessarily being greedy with their information, but really willing to lend a hand to others and answer questions and really just build up each other. And so that was something I could only do by going to a conference. So if you have the ability to go to conferences, definitely do that. And your department might have some sort of a way to help fund that for you if there's like a financial barrier, or even the conference itself might. And then also, this would probably apply more to like underclassmen, but upperclassmen too. Try to connect with the upperclassmen in your fields. They're going to be graduating soon. They're going to have a feel for what's coming next. And if you connect with them in a couple of years when you're in that same position, they might have some good advice for you, or they might even know of positions where they found jobs that you could also come in and fill out. I know that's happened to a few of my friends where they had people 2-3 years ahead of them graduate, and they reached out to them and said, hey, we have actually some extra jobs available if you're looking for some. So that would definitely be my advice, would be network, not just for the sake of trying to see what's available, but to really get a feel for what an environment is like. Because if you're going to be spending a lot of your time there, you want to make sure that it's as pleasant and positive and healthy a space as you possibly can.
Thank you so much, Rae. Our last question about networking is for Gianna, and we want to ask if you have any general advice about networking in your field. And I also know that you interned for Northrop Grumman, so I was wondering if you had advice on networking in and outside of academia, and also like more the private sector, and if you could speak a little on how is there overlap, or is it like pretty separate?
I would say that there's little to no overlap between like industry networking versus academia networking. It's basically from to the point of what you know, like to who you know. So like Rae was talking about conferences, and one conference that I really support, that definitely allowed me to get positions for specifically industry positions for internships, was the Grace Hopper Conference. It's set in Florida. It's specifically for women in computing. And they have scholarships for anybody if that's like a financial barrier as well. And it's basically just a conference that's like brings all women identifying peoples together, and like it shows like really cool information on research, or also industry people come in. And the other thing that a lot of conferences do are interviews, on-site interviews. So I did an on-site interview with Northrop Grumman, which allowed me to like thankfully get a position there. But based off of like my morals and kind of what Northrop Grumman is known for, I specifically stopped working with them. But I would say definitely reviewing your network, even like on LinkedIn, Glassdoor. I think LinkedIn was my main source of networking, specifically, as well as like different conferences and summer opportunities that I saw.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think now we're going to turn it over to Kendall, who's going to ask some questions from the audience.
Okay. Let's see what we have. Sorry, this is loading, but anyone can answer this. We have, what is one thing you would tell your first year undergrad self, and then one thing you tell your senior undergrad self, and anyone can answer it.
I'll raise my hand. I guess that's like probably the easier way. One thing I would tell my undergrad, like my first year self, is that it's okay not to have a plan. I think coming in, I thought that my whole goal was to be like a part of like FANG, which stands for like Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, all of that, like the big tech companies, and like working there, because that's genuinely what all I knew was within CS. So like opening your surroundings and not like being pigeonholed to a specific idea of success, because like I did a whole 180 during my senior year, where I saw that I'm more interested in research. And the one thing I would tell my senior self is it will get done if you let it get done. So yeah, I think that would be my one thing for my first year, senior year self.
Amazing, thank you so much. Does anyone else have or want to answer this question, or we can move on as well? Okay. Oh. Yes, Rae.
I think one thing that I would tell, I don't know what I would tell my first year self. Okay, well, maybe one thing I'd tell my first year self would be look into REUs more research. I don't remember what it's called, but someone can correct me. Just summer research opportunities. You can really find a lot of find out a lot about your interests through those, and that's a good place to start. Something I would tell my senior self though is this is a little bit different, but don't yes, okay, research experience for undergraduates, thank you. But something I would tell my senior year self is definitely take care of yourself, take care of your mental health. All of these things are extremely stressful and will only get more stressful if you don't take care of yourself. And by the time you actually do start at any sort of position or whatnot, it's really important to be on good footing mentally, especially when you're beginning a new career path. And so in the midst of all of this transition, don't forget to prioritize yourself and to really make sure you take good care of yourself.
Awesome, thank you so much. I think it's really important that we take care of ourselves first before we get to like tunnel vision on some like career goal. And I think that's very important to know, so really appreciate that. Okay, our next question is, what is something you would do differently either in your career or schooling? I'll start with this one. I would say, to kind of maybe echo this idea that's been said a few times. I think this to me just relates to like open-mindedness as well as really being assertive with networking and talking to other people at every avenue in the field. I think, your peers, I think maybe upperclassmen or peers that are slightly older than you. I think, professors going to, networking events and meeting people from other, avenues and other aspects, I think is really huge because, the more that you meet people, it's like everyone has this story of how, what they maybe originally planned on doing and were so set on doing somehow gets changed a little bit, and you end up exactly where you're kind of supposed to be. And so I think just, taking advantage of really hearing these stories and having that advice and, just knowing that it is okay to change what you originally, set out or had planned that you were going to do. I think that oftentimes you end up finding, where you are really supposed to be and things that are going to be in a position that will really make you happy. But, you can't do that if you're very closed-minded or closed off to all these other opportunities. So even if, on paper, it's not maybe what you thought that you wanted. I think just having some open-mindedness to really embrace that and, to get there, it can really be helpful to take advantage of all the resources around you. And definitely, like, I would just emphasize again that, you can also learn a lot from people that are your peers. And it's not necessarily that it always has to be people that are like, I guess, further down the road or something like that. I think that, we can learn from people in various like stages of your career. So I think just keeping the conversation flowing is really important. And I would do that earlier is what I would do differently. I would tell myself that and have that mindset earlier on, I think.
Awesome, thank you. And then did anyone else want to respond to that question? Okay, that's fine. Going off of like kind of giving your like a young self advice, what advice would you give to young students trying to decide on if graduate school is the best path for them? Yes, Rae?
I would definitely say I have limited, okay, just a disclaimer. I have a limited perspective since I've only been involved in physics, but I would say don't feel limited just because that's what you're like supposed to do. Really figure out if that's what you need in order to get to where you're going. I really was appreciative of my gap year because it really gave me the motivation that I needed in order to get through grad school, because grad school is hard, especially the classes and just I also did the first 2 years of my my graduate program during the pandemic, so that added to it. But if I didn't have the previous experience that gave me the personal conviction of, okay, I do know that I want this, and I do know that this is something I'm willing to fight through and to make it through to see to the end, it would have been a much harder and more painful experience. And I'm willing to bet that in a lot of cases, there are really wonderful, valid opportunities that are available to you that don't involve the graduate student path. So be willing to explore those, because it could save you a lot of time, energy, money, etc.
Great, thank you. Let's go with Gianna next.
Kind of to Rae's point, I think for me specifically, I didn't have a lot of like research experience in undergrad, just based off of like how the CS department kind of looks through research during my time. But I would say I feel like REU programs, and I posted like also an REU program for specifically BIPOC students, was very helpful for me, because I feel like during that summer, it's kind of where I found like my passion for what I wanted to do. And I saw like kind of like the day-to-day process of like, okay, this is what it's like to be a grad student. This is kind of like the rigor that it takes to be a grad student. So it was kind of like a little snippet. And I feel like I think that's a good way of like noticing if graduate school is for you, instead of like, one thing that I hear for a lot of other people that are looking at grad school was like, I like school, so I'm going to go to grad school. And it's not really like that, based off of just the amount of other things that go on while in grad school. So I would definitely say like, look at research opportunities, maybe on campus, maybe work in a lab for a semester, or like do an REU program, and just see how that goes.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to Cassie.
Sure. So I guess like my advice for this would be to one, test the waters by volunteering in a laboratory. I know that AU has, you know, tons of laboratories where they allow graduate students or undergrads to volunteer and work alongside with graduate students. I always had like 2 or 3 undergrads working with me when I was getting my PhD there. It's a great way to just like sink your feet into you know, what does experimental design look like? Like, what does a day to day in the lab look like, even if you only spend like 1 to 2 hours or maybe 10 hours a week in the laboratory? The second thing I would say is make sure that you enjoy writing, because I would say I do like 80% of my time is spent writing some document, either a report, a manuscript, a grant, official memos, things like that. I do spend, you know, quite a bit of my time like in surgery or in the laboratory, but the bulk of my time is spent writing. And I don't think people understand that. And so, you know, hone your lab skills, but also work on your writing skills. It's very, very, very important. That's like my advice. If you hate writing and you love working in the lab, you know, maybe start out with like a research assistant position, so that way you can spend the bulk of your time doing the lab work that you love so much.
Awesome, thank you. And then we'll have Laura go last.
So, you know, just to briefly, I guess, add a little bit from a little bit of a different perspective, I would say that definitely having like some lab research experience is really vital, I think. And if, you know, you maybe don't have like as much as you would like, or haven't been able to do that as an undergraduate. Like for me, I came from a pretty small school outside of Pittsburgh, and there just wasn't as much like research going on there. So I was involved in research, but one of my projects was more of like an independent study for a class. And my other project that was more like my interests, unfortunately was cut short because of COVID. So I sort of felt like towards the end of my bachelor's that I wasn't exactly sure if, you know, the research that I thought that I wanted to do was actually what I wanted. And so for me, getting a master's, you know, instead of maybe going right into a PhD as well was very important. And I think it was definitely the right decision for me. I think it really just strengthened a lot of that experience that I had and gave me new experiences. So, you know, it's not like PhD are the only options as well. You know, you have master's programs, and there's also postbac programs that can help to, you know, get some more research experience working in labs, since postbac is not quite the same as, you know, pursuing an undergraduate degree. You have more time to actually be like doing research. But as someone who is like has just gone through this process of, you know, applying to grad school again, I definitely felt some doubt. I had submitted all the applications and had done a few interviews, and then I got to this moment where it was like, do I really want to do this again? Is this for me? And that was, you know, a bit of like an internal struggle for about 2 weeks, and something just kind of clicked with me where I realized, you know, the thought occurred of like, oh, maybe I could start a program a little bit later or come back to it. But the thought of, you know, waiting a couple years and then maybe it's not possible to start at that moment in life, it was like devastating. I felt like it was heartbreaking to think that maybe I would never actually do a PhD. And I think it was just that realization for me that was strong enough to be like, if I'm going to be heartbroken at the thought of like never getting to do this and to pursue this, it is something that I feel like I need to go after. And last thing is that even if you do start a program, you're not trapped, you know, you still have, I don't think this is very common. I don't really know people that have had this experience, and I don't know if, you know, any Rae, Gianna, Cassie, if you have anything to add, but I mean, you are not like trapped in, if you start something, being, you know, miserable in it and thinking that like you just have to see it through. You know, if you really start a program and it is not for you, like remember that you still have the choice to change. Like we've said before too, you know, it's okay if what you initially thought is not what ends up being the right fit for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all sharing. The next question we have is, what classes have been / were your favorite or most memorable? Is your hand still raised for that, Cassie?
Sure. I guess I can talk about that. Sorry, I didn't see that. But I guess like one of my favorite classes was actually at AU, and it was a graduate level behavior neuroendocrinology class. And the professor that taught the class taught it in like a story like mode. So we would like come to class and he would like do like, you know, 10 like a decade's worth of publications in like story format, and I'm like still mesmerized by like his ability to do that, and I'm like want to be just like him. Like I like strive to be able to like describe science the way that he does it. And so I just like still have these like epic memories of that class and in my head, and think back to it all the time.
Let's go to Laura next.
So I think that my favorite class at AU was, it's a grad and undergrad class in biology. It was Dr. Krogan's molecular biology course. I just absolutely, the topic was fascinating to me, but just the teaching style as well. I think that the attention to details and, you know, pointing out like small details was just really captivating to me. But I think that the way that he teaches the course as well was, you know, there's so many courses in AU's bio department where you can just really feel like tangible passion from the instructor for what they're talking about and what they're teaching. And I think that makes such a difference. And I definitely felt that in the class, even through Zoom, because it was still during COVID.
Thank you. Let's go to Gianna next.
So one of my probably favorite classes that I took were taught by Professor Zhao. So she taught the computer vision course, which was really interesting based off of like her instruction and how she decided to teach it. So like she involved like journal club, as well as like we had to read a lot of papers dedicated to computer vision. And it really helped me now that I'm taking a machine learning course now, and like some of the stuff that she talked about definitely transferred over, as well as Professor Godwin's information to visualization course. My capstone was around was the data visualization projects that visualized police militarization within the United States and tried to find ways to mitigate harm within, you know, that are like prominent within community color. So like it kind of allowed me to fuse my like social humanities perspective, along with like CS, which was really helpful for me. And yeah, I think those were my two favorite classes currently.
Thank you. And Rae?
So it's hard for me to pick a favorite class, at least within the physics department, because we had a really small department, and so you can form like really good relationships with all the professors, and you can sense that they're all really passionate. Nate Harshman's introductory physics class is definitely one for the books. I can still remember some of the homework questions from that. Very, very well done. But one of my favorite classes that I took actually was in my senior year, and it was a climatology class that I just took because I needed like 3 extra credits to be full-time so I could keep my financial aid or whatever. And it was really fascinating. It was taught by, I think, like someone who worked for NASA as their climate scientist. And it was just such an interesting and accessible way of just understanding how ecosystems and weather patterns and climate all worked together. And it had nothing at all to do with my field, but it was really worthwhile taking. So I guess I would just say, if there's like a random class that you're like, that sounds really interesting and you can fit it in, just go for it. It could be a really valuable experience.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. Our next question is, how do you ask your boss or supervisor that you might be interested in something else other than what you're currently working on? Yes, Rae?
I think this goes back to Laura, what you were saying about not being trapped necessarily. It doesn't in grad school, but also in just various positions. If there is something that's not working, it's just really important to have honest conversations with the people you're working with. I can't guarantee that there will always be flexibility about that, but there might be another project or type of project that there is an opening on that they can transition you to. So for instance, when I was at NASA, there was one project I was working on that I was definitely responsible for a decent amount of work for, but I also expressed that I wanted to work on another project as well that was more focused on science outreach for that department too. And so they put me in charge of another project that was a really valuable, meaningful experience for me, just because I just went in honestly and just asked about it with no expectations that that something could have worked out, and but just hopeful and just assuming the best. And hopefully you have supervisors and bosses who really care about you and understand that if something's not a good fit for you, you'll be more valuable and productive if they can work out something else. And the same thing goes for graduate schools. If you're working on a project and you're just, this project is not a good fit for you, just be honest about it, and maybe there's a way to transition, and hopefully you have a good team that will support you in that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh yes, Laura.
I think just maybe something to add to that is, I think that, like Rae is saying, there's no guarantee that there will maybe always be flexibility, but I do think that it's good to be able to, advocate for yourself and to be like assertive in that sense sometimes. So I think that, making the ask is worth like the risk. And when making the ask too, I think that where applicable, or like if it's an option, to maybe even present like an idea to your boss or supervisor, and maybe have a little bit of like how that might look, or what it might look like to actually execute that idea, and to maybe go for like the new project, rather than presenting like a new idea but not necessarily like having any like way of like how it's going to get there. I think that having some sort of like solution or half solution even worked out ahead of time might like increase the chances of it being flexible, and maybe being something that you can expand and working on this project that you're interested in.
Thank you. And Cassie?
I think just to build off of what Laura just said, I think something that you can, do mid-conversation too is like, with science and everything needing like a source of funding and things like that, maybe you can talk about like different sources of like funding. Is there like intramural grants that you can start to get like pilot data to go into like a full grant proposal, and kind of set yourself up for success, and then maybe even take the project with you when you like finish your PhD, for example, or something like that? Because usually you come in on a project, but you're there for your PhD for such a long time that there's you're constantly applying for funding and things like that. So maybe just like having like those routine conversations with your PI or your mentor, and then you can start integrating your interests into like future proposals and ideas, and hopefully it gets funded, and you can either start the work while you're there, or at least like see it to fruition via like checking in on the project, or like I said, taking it with you to wherever you're off to next. Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. I'm gonna pass it on to Talia. She has a question for you all.
Hi, so I know a few of you have already touched on having to kind of move past like a certain idea that you had where your career was going in the beginning. So I was wondering, what was the biggest phrase or mindset that you had to get over or get past in order to be where you are now in your career? And also if you've also found a certain new mindset or lesson that has helped you where you are now, if you could share that for anyone. Yeah, Gianna.
For me, I would say one thing that I'm doing now and that has helped me a lot right now is to not take everything so seriously. I think going to a school like AU, it's very like known to like work really hard and like grind all the time, but also like understanding that your mental health comes first, and that's the one thing that like genuinely is going to allow you to achieve that goal if you're like not, if your head is on like right. So I would say to not take everything seriously, and that it will get done like once it is done, and always just like do your best, like once it's done, it's done. And then I had another thought. I'll also like community is really, really important to me. I think I wouldn't be in the place where I am right now without like the scholarship program that I was in. So I was also a part of FDDS, which was like a scholarship within American University that has definitely helped me with just like my scholars within the program, just like pushing me forward and helping me get to where I am now, as well as like for me personally, during my time at AU, finding specifically BIPOC STEM programs definitely helped me get to seeing helped me get through like the path of seeing myself either in academia or industry or anything like that. That definitely was very crucial for my path within my career.
Thank you. Does anyone else? Sorry. Thank you. Does anyone else have something to share? Yeah, Laura.
I honestly, I don't even remember like what my old mindset was, and maybe that's a good thing. But I think that, you know, my old mindset with like what I thought that I was going to do, I thought that I was going to be a lawyer. And so I started out as a political science major, and that's where I was for about 2 years. And then I added a biology major very late. I was a junior. And that was just like such a huge change. I kind of thought that I was originally going to maybe, I don't know, do more like something like environmental law. And so I started out as just like a minor, and part of like the environmental studies minor at my undergrad school was taking like bio courses first. And I was in the very first like biology course for kind of like freshmen, and I just loved it. Like I just fell in love with the course so much, and kept going. And I think it was a little while into that, you know, I realized like, wow, this is not what I was planning on doing at all. But there's a really great quote. I don't know if anybody likes quotes, but it's by Kurt Vonnegut, and the quote goes, and I urge you to please notice when you are happy and exclaim or murmur or think at some point, if this isn't nice, I don't know what is. And I think that's my new mindset of just, you know, you have to like really notice and appreciate these moments that make you feel happy and make you feel like you're in exactly the right place. And if it's not what you originally planned or thought, so be it.
All right, thank you so much. Carly had a question.
Yeah, so I know Rae and Gianna, you were both talking a little bit earlier about going to conferences and kind of the importance of that for you during undergrad. I was just kind of wondering, how do you go about finding conferences, especially when you're still undergrad, and just kind of going to those?
I can like list some off my head that I know. So one is Tapia, which is a conference for BIPOC people in computing. There's also the ABCRAMS, which is like dealing with biology for specifically BIPOC in computing. There's also what's the other one? The one that I was just talking about, the GHC one, which is dealing with Grace Hopper. I feel like a lot of the conferences talk with other advisors or talk with other professors on campus that are doing research that you're kind of interested in, and just like speaking with them of like, oh, where do you publish, or where do you look at, where do you like do poster presentations? I think that's like the main ones that I would look at. There's a few others like at Rice University. I didn't really attend any conferences during my undergrad, but I know that there are a few. So if you just like search undergrad, where do most undergrads go for like X department, you will definitely find some there.
Yeah, I would also say if you're unsure, just send an email to the head of your department or to your professors. I'm sure they are aware of at least somewhere undergraduates can attend, if not maybe submit for a poster of some kind. Also student orgs, if there's like a student organization affiliated with your discipline, they might also be organizing like a group trip or something like that, as well as local organizations in DC itself. Definitely like ask around if you're unfamiliar of any conferences in the area that you're welcome to attend to.
Kendall, can I say one thing? I just wanted to make a quick note that within each of our STEM disciplines, there are professional societies, and the students are, able to join for a very discounted rate. And so this is really like a way in to know about these conferences and things like that. So I just thought I'd throw that out. So if you're in biology or chemistry or physics or whatever it is, check out the professional societies within the disciplines, and that's a really great resource. So that's all I had to say about that.
Okay, another question that we had was, how do I write a personal statement for grad school? Yes, Gianna.
I think it's different for different departments. I think for those within like engineering and computing, they're kind of the same based off of, you don't have lab rotations like other wet labs do. So a lab rotation is like you're going around different labs and you're like, oh, I'm working with this lab for this semester. I'm working for this lab this semester for your like first year of graduate school. For me, the process kind of goes with like, the first paragraph is like, hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm interested in this program. My research interest is like something kind of broad, but not too broad. And then like, think of like the middle paragraphs as kind of like the paragraphs dedicated to the work that you've done. And then like the final sentence to each of those paragraphs is kind of like weaving in how you would either want to continue with doing that research or continue doing that within graduate school. And then kind of like, yeah, like those middle paragraphs are kind of like bragging to yourself. And then like the second to last paragraph or the last paragraph is more geared towards the school itself. So for example, I'm at Northeastern right now, and the advisors that I'm under are Safe Savage and Alexandra Toe. That might not mean anything to you guys, but in the paragraph, you kind of just say like, my research is more aligned with so-and-so's research because of this. And I think if I were to work within this department, I would want to do this, that, and the third with that advisor. So it's different for different departments. So for different labs, you might not need to be going into that much detail with the advisors, but like it shows to the research committee, the graduate committee, that you're really research the school. Also, a thing that they don't really tell you about graduate school is some schools don't have like an admissions team, like how you have it in undergrad. The people that look at your application are more towards PIs, which are the advisors of those departments, or who you would research with. So whoever you write in your personal statement is who you would kind of want to work with long term. So like always keep that in mind. And then also, I had another thought, but I think that's the main points for like, oh, and also like for me specifically during the summer, reaching out with, this is one thing that they don't really tell you, is like reaching out with other advisors that you're interested in, and maybe setting up like a Zoom meeting of like, hi, I saw your lab and it's really interesting. I would like to talk with you a little bit. So like when they see your name on the application pool, they're like, oh, like Gianna, I remember I spoke with them. Let me talk with them. Cause like, that's one thing for me that was like very useful, was cold calling, cold emailing. That's kind of how I got into my program currently right now. I emailed my advisor. She really liked me. She set up a Zoom call. She looked at my personal statement and she was like, okay, based off of what you're doing, I think you would be like a great fit for my lab. Just like send in your resume, and like for formality reasons. And like that was kind of how I got to where I am, and just like that, like dedicating like during the summer, like really researching those labs and like kind of why you're interested in them and like crafting that statement.
Yep, thank you for sharing. I think this might be our last question for tonight. We have, how has being a woman in the STEM field affect your experience? Yes, right?
That's a good question. I've been really thankful that I, in both undergrad and graduate school, have attended programs where the makeup of my class was pretty evenly ratioed gender-wise. And having that support has been really helpful. That's something that unfortunately you have to seek out maybe more intentionally if that's if that's something that's valuable to you, as it is to me. And something else is that it can be there are small things that can impact your experience that you don't realize in terms of like work-life balance and such. For instance, the policy of my school is that if I want to have a kid during my program, there's no, you essentially have to take unpaid medical leave in order to substitute for maternity leave. So there's like no maternity leave policy at all, which is an inherent like disadvantage compared to others. And so there are like these like small things that build up that I found that it's really important to have people in your life who are willing to advocate for you, who are seeing the work that you're doing and see you as a valuable part of your team, who know you and who, when these things come up, are willing to fight for you and support you in those ways.
Thank you. And we'll go to Cassie next.
Sure. So I would say I tend to like surround myself with like other strong women. So I'm sure like most of you guys know Dr. Victoria Connaughton. She was my PhD mentor and she's a rock star scientist and a mom and somebody I look up to on a day-to-day basis. And I still am very well connected to her. And also Dr. Meg Bentley in the Department of Biology, another really great, strong female that I'm very well connected to. I would say like now that I'm working for like the military where the majority of the population is male, it's definitely like a different scenario. But I think maintaining those connections with other like strong women, especially as I transitioned into motherhood. So I have a 2-year-old daughter. So, you know, midway through my postdoc, I got pregnant and I had to tell my supervisor that I was pregnant and I had to have those difficult conversations. It was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And I like looked to you know, my mentors at AU for advice and guidance. And you know what, I think I've like come back like even stronger. I was promoted shortly after I came back from having my child and I really like proved myself. And I think that something that like is just like feeds on me is that like the busier that I am, the more productive I am. So like being a mom like actually like really helped me become like a stronger female in the field. And I'm sure like if you talk to other, you know, women in science members and things like that, they'll have like similar like shared experiences as well. So
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I just want to say everyone in person here is so thankful for you guys, and I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Larkin to close us out.
I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists and all of our outstanding women in science officers this year. You have done such a phenomenal job. I can't even tell you how proud, I can't even put into words how proud I am of you this year. So all of you that are our alums, I welcome you back at any point. Like I said, when we were just sort of doing our tech check at the beginning, I do have a little coffee bar in my office. So if you are ever back on campus, please reach out, and I will just love to have you come by and share your wisdom and experience. This has been a fantastic event. All of you that have been in attendance either at the watch party or on Zoom, I hope that you've learned some valuable things tonight, and really appreciate it. To those that were co-sponsoring our events, we thank you immensely. We couldn't have done this without you. So thank you so much again, panelists, and you'll hear from me after. And our student leaders, you did a phenomenal job. Really proud of you. So I'll officially call this event concluded. So have a nice evening, everybody.